So today was also the birthday of another very important philosopher, so let's talk about that a little. There was this time, and I must have been about 15 or so, and my dad had finished restoring an engraved Renaissance wooden box. And the client, the owner of the box, was admiring this finished work, and he asked me, "Oh, what do you think?" And I asked him, "What do you mean?" Now, this guy already didn't like me, so he just shook his head and ignored me. But what I meant was this guy asking me to give my opinion on his box as a piece of art, or my father's work on the box? Communication can be a problem, because we all have different ways we think and we use words. Have you ever had a long argument where after a while it became clear that you actually agreed with the other person, you were just using certain words differently? The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, born today in 1889, was obsessed with the problem of language and how we use it. Wittgenstein was a bit of a queer figure. He was a quintessential mad genius, really intense and super charismatic, but also frequently plagued by suicidal thoughts. And incidentally, he was also the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. So ahead of his time that when he handed in his thesis to none other than Bertrand Russell, he said, "Don't worry, I know you'll never understand it." There's this great quote about him by the economist John Maynard Keynes on meeting him. He said, "God has arrived." That's the kind of reverence people had for Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein sees language as the fundamental fabric of our reality. He famously said, "The limits of my language are the limits of my world." On the basic level, our thoughts describe affairs as they are. They create pictures in us, and our language tracks those thoughts. He also saw language a bit like mathematics. It had to be clear and precise, and things had to be described as being either true or false. And that's where problems arise, because we often misuse language. So much of our language is fictional. It's not really connected to reality. It's all about interpretations and feelings and value judgments. So say this, right? Trump is the president. Fine, that thought tracks a fact. It is descriptive of a state of reality. But what if I say, Trump shouldn't be president? What is being described here? Trump shouldn't be president. Then you come along and say, no, Trump should be president, and then squabble, squabble, squabble. We are saying two things that simply contradict each other, and it's impossible to say which is true or not, because this word should isn't really linked to anything in reality. According to Wittgenstein, what's correct here is to say, I have a feeling of distaste at the fact that Trump is president, and I wish that he were not. That's descriptive. And then the other person can say, I too feel that way. Or they could say, I don't feel that way at all. But that's still fine. It's the end of the discussion. We've described our internal states. But by saying that Trump shouldn't be president, we've taken language a step further, confused its descriptive function, and disconnected it from reality. So now we're all just up in our own heads. All our arguments, our problems in communication and in philosophy, stem from the fact that instead of using language descriptively, we talk about the meanings behind the words and the interpretations and the values. Another cool concept Wittgenstein came up with is how we use language and words to paint those pictures in people's minds. If I say, Mark is sitting on the couch, you form a mental image. But your mental image is totally different from mine. Because in your picture, the couch is red and Mark is sitting in the middle of it and his feet are on the coffee table, etc. But in my picture, maybe the couch is green. Maybe it's larger than your couch. Maybe it has a different shape. Maybe Mark is sitting on the side and his legs are crossed. And maybe there's a window behind him and a tree and it's snowing. So we have two very different pictures of reality. And that's with a mere factual description. Can you imagine the chaos in trying to communicate my picture of something like Coke is better than Pepsi, or as controversial as I don't think a world without guns would be a good thing? Basically, Wittgenstein is telling us that if we're super precise in how we use our language, but also pay close attention to how people around us are using language and to what they're really saying, all our problems in communication evaporate.